Welcome to season 2 of Fractional CMOs and the 90-Day Win. I'm Dean Way. This season, we're going to talk through scenarios that companies and these fractional CMOs experience to share lessons learned and tips on how to get the most out of a fractional CMO. So, Dan, hi.
Hi, Dean.
Okay, so you just started a, let's say, hypothetical one-year engagement, okay?
Yeah.
And what's the first problem that your clients tend to need fixing, or what's the first problem that you know is going to be there and you're going to go hunting for it? And before you answer that, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Dan Jones. I am a serial entrepreneur turned marketer. I run an online marketing education platform in resource vault called Conversion Chemistry, which is targeted for small business owners and entrepreneurs. And if said small businesses and entrepreneurs don't want to necessarily learn, then I run a small business marketing agency that will do it for them.
All right. So
Okay.
What problem do you go hunting for first?
Usually the type of small to mid businesses I work with, they
Right.
don't know what they don't know, which is perfectly okay. So I have a framework of about 10 bullet points that I apply to an observe and report situation. I usually start by asking questions. I kind of see my role as like almost a therapist, where if I do more listening and ask the right questions strategically, the problems and even sometimes easy win solutions will present themselves. Full transparency, I do therapy myself, which is kind of where I adopted this model from, where the best of the best I've experienced, you establish rapport. So there has to be at least some base level rapport and trust to begin with, or at least build that trust. And then tell me your tale. Tell me what's going on. And the problems will typically out themselves. And I'll ask some questions in between, like, what are you doing for marketing? And how that question is answered kind of determines what the next steps may be. Because I'm sure, like we've all experienced, is, marketing encompasses many, many, many pillars and disciplines. And usually people, business owners, CEOs, just tell me where they're spending their ad dollars on and what channels.
Right.
Okay. So that tells me one thing is at least they know about that part, and we can address that later. But are they even aware of their branding? Are they aware of their positioning? Really basic stuff. Back to the 4 Ps, the people that they have in there. When they have leads, when say a sales team has leads, what are they doing with it? That really steers the narrative. And like I said, my 10 points of fatal errors that a lot of small to mid businesses really experience that I've identified by working with them. And part of what I do is, since working with small and mid, is I can cross pollinate, and really easy solutions can be applied that one industry has not even thought of yet.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of professional services actually is kind of built on that, right? Like you just see more problems and more varieties of the same problem that an individual client would ever see, and so you get to come at it from that point of view.
Right. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stomp on you there.
That's it.
It's basically lack of focus and lack of planning and lack of understanding who their target is are probably the top
3. Excellent. Awesome. So hi, Jessica.
Hello. Hi, Dean. Hi, Dan.
Okay, so Jessica, so the same question, actually. Let's stay with it for a second. Right? You just started your one-year engagement. Today's day 1. What problem do you usually go hunting for, or do you expect to see? And before you answer that, tell the audience a little bit about you.
Sure. So hi, my name is Jess Moyer. I'm a fractional CMO. I've spent 25 years in financial services, so I tend to specialize in financial services and fintech. I've worked in a lot of different areas of the business, so I pride myself on my more holistic and comprehensive approach, not just sort of a marketing perspective. Work small business, independent, big business, corporate, and been out on my own for the last 4 years, I should say, advising clients and working on a fractional CMO basis. Right. And I think, like Dan, I don't go in digging or looking for a problem to fix. I go in with more inquiry and revisiting the fundamentals. And I think what you experience really depends on the maturity of the business. So by fundamentals, I mean, what's the addressable market look like? What's the company's position in the market? What does the competition look like? Who are they targeting? What challenges are they experiencing? How do their targets profile? Do they have a written plan? A lot of times it's not necessarily fixing so much as formalizing and making things more kind of intentional. I have been in scenarios where I have early stage clients that are, not on a good web platform or bought HubSpot and don't know what to do with it. Things like that. Those are fixes for sure. But early stage is really around revisiting the fundamentals, and have they taken a zoom back and considered those fundamentals and made some intentional decisions. Sometimes clients are trying to be too many things, and they're not really dialed into their ideal customer profile. And so that's where I come in, and I do like to do a lot of interviewing clients, stakeholders, customers, prospects, get a lot of feedback from the market too.
Okay, so let's talk about that, and sort of let's move to the client side of the table for a second. Sure. Then. So other than, because every fractional CMO gives me the same answer for first, but then when you push back, you get interesting answers. Other than sharing information with you, which you'd expect the CEO and the company to have to do because they've hired you, like why keep you in the dark, right? Besides that, like how does a CEO, in 2024 get maximum value out of a fractional CMO that they've just brought on?
Yeah, I think sometimes the sharing information part should be underscored, because sometimes I have been in engagements where I haven't seen the full picture, like full transparency, and it's caused some challenges. But I would say definitely like agreeing goals from the beginning, and like establishing a reporting cadence and some level of accountability. One thing I didn't talk about when we talk about the first year and first jumping in is, what kind of reporting exists on not just marketing, but just on the performance of the business, and what opportunities as far as sources of business and gaps, or, real growth areas does it represent. And I think setting goals and really diving deep on those goals and putting them on paper and revisiting them and having some level of accountability. I think there has to be patience, but if you're going to try to get the maximum amount of value, definitely a sit down to review how we're tracking relative to the goals that we set up. But there's still sometimes, a lot of times, where it comes down to the basics, like making time, making sure the team makes time and prioritizes and the full team is transparent, especially when you're working in scenarios where you've got B2B clients and it's a partnership with sales, and are they bought in? And, we've made this investment. Was everybody part of it? And how can we collaborate together? So that would be my advice.
Okay. Dan, I want to invert the question a little bit. Okay. So let's
do another inverting
allowed. So Dan, let's pretend that you're talking to, you've been called into like a webinar or a Vistage group or something, right? And the topic is the ways that CEOs waste the money they spent on their fractional CMO.
Interesting.
What would you tell that audience? Don't do this.
Yeah. So I'm kind of like mind bending now that the question was sort of inverted, but to get maximum value, the expectations have to be clear up front.
Yes.
And I can actually avoid the inverted question by saying that the relationship is always going to be a two-way street as a partnership. And that the fractional CMO should be sharing information to the CEO just as much as well. From a maximization of value standpoint, it comes down to, I guess, the fractional CMO eking out of the CEO what assets they currently have that can be leveraged in any sort of new direction or plan that's going to be taking place. Because by you, I mean a CEO can waste a lot of money advertising on the wrong channels that is not a good fit for that particular industry.
Right.
So, and it kind of relates back to number one about what I look for first, but it's finding out about those assets that the CEO currently has within their organization.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to what Dan said around. I like how you, even though I was teasing you, Dean, I like how you said, just looked at it from a framework of like, how do you waste money? I think a big piece is trust. If you're entering into this engagement, you've got to trust the process and trust the person that you've signed on with. I do still, I'll be in the middle of fundamentals and I'll get, well, let's do this today or let's do that, today, especially if you have more hands-on folks that have, grown up in the business through selling and marketing and have a decent enough understanding. They don't want to take their hand off the wheel. So I think the trust is huge too. And then having like a clear agreement up front of, the scope. I would say spend the time up front before and agree to the process. Just like you said, what are you going to be doing the first 90 days? And can you map that out for me and put that on paper so that we're both on the same page before you jump in?
So Dan, I have another hypothetical, okay? You have a friend. You like this person. They've got lots of experience, but they're about to walk into their very first fractional CMO engagement, all right?
Right.
There's already a marketing team, like junior people, mid-level people, right? What lessons or advice would you give that fractional CMO who's about to walk into like an existing marketing team at a client site?
Sure. So that ends up, becoming analogous with a consultant. And that word has a lot of bad connotations with existing teams in business at any level. So my first piece of advice would be do not be a stiff consultant. Okay. Again, the common theme is building that trust and rapport. That's going to be universal when dealing with people. And that goes exactly with a fractional CMO going into an existing marketing team. You know what I do, and what I would tell my hypothetical friend is ease the tension. Align yourself with that team. Ask them who their competitors are, and say, okay, I want to crush them. Let's work together to do that. Really, just ease that tension right away.
Right.
How can we do that? What is this team doing right now? I like that. What tools are you using? Find some common ground. Just take it down to a real personal level. Whether that common ground is, within the scope of marketing, marketers love talking about marketing. As I look at the stack of three of us right now here, enthusiastic talking about marketing. Ask them, if they've heard of any particular bit of news that might be of interest, what newsletters they subscribe to, or, walking around if there's an office, sports teams, there's anything you can connect with somebody on that level for that will establish that rapport. And that's where it starts before you get into the meat and potatoes of any particulars that they're working on.
And Jessica, what do you think? Your friend is walking into an existing marketing team as a fractional.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that Dan said are very true in terms of it's really the mindset. Again, it goes back to like, I don't like the word, what are you fixing? It's more of like you're strengthening the strength, So you're coming in as a coach and a mentor and a teacher. And I try to approach it, as if I'm coming to join the team permanently and they're
Right.
my team and I'm here to support. Yeah, I'm going to ask a lot of questions initially, but it's all with the goal of strengthening the strength and not trying to make waves and course correct or that kind. I think it's kind of what a good manager would do,
Right.
and that's how I try to approach it. But there is a little bit of that painful period where you have to ask a lot of questions. But I think you can do that in a supportive way.
Well, let's stay with that for a second, but like flip it around, not invert the question, but let's flip it around. Okay. So you're a full-time employee, junior or mid-level, working on a marketing team, and your company just hired a fractional CMO. Like, what changes can you expect to see in your job
Well, I
or
think,
on your team?
yeah, well, literally you have a new boss,
Sort of.
Yeah, sort of. I would, if it were me, I don't think you would necessarily see change right away. I know it's hard because we're focused on the 90-day win, right? And how can we be aggressive and make improvements? But I wouldn't want I wouldn't want people to be scared about that. I think if a company brings in a fractional CMO, it means that they need that senior thought leader and the person with a deeper bench of, a deeper set of experience. And they're there to continue to enhance what the team is doing. So, you if you were sort of off on an island, you maybe now have more support. You have somebody to bounce ideas off of. Because I have had clients where the CEO is like, I can't coach this team. I don't have the time. I'm focused on other things. So maybe you now have somebody to teach and coach. But if you maybe had a close relationship, there's potentially some challenges where you now have a new boss. But again, in the scenarios that I've been, I've found it fun because, we've been lucky enough to have a good team, a supportive team, an excited, eager to learn team. So, and we were enough away from each other in terms of the amount of experience that I had versus their roles that I really felt I was value add to them professionally, and they're still friends.
Right. Dan, what do you think? You're already on an existing team. You're like a junior or a mid-level marketing team person, and the company's just hired a fractional CMO. Like, what are you going to do? What should you do? What advice would you give to those employees to get the most out of that experience?
So, I'm still looking at this with a biased lens of a CMO and a longtime marketer. However, marketers share this commonality. There's almost like an intangible camaraderie that exists. And, Jess, when you said about mindset, I think the same can be applied to the junior or mid-level marketers is, whoa, we've got this ringer on our team now. Okay, that's great. Let's go. And, depending on how the internal cultural relationship is, we all know the sales versus marketing paradigm that exists in organizations. Whether sales and marketing get along or whether they don't, that can be leveraged. Okay, sales, we've got our ringer now. You think these leads are no good? Check out what we can do. And same thing with the competition is, okay, we've got the ringer, which is almost like the reverse paradigm of how I would go in, even if I was objectively a ringer.
You want to go in with the swagger? No. Do you hope that they pick up on the swagger and get a bit for themselves? Absolutely.
Yeah. The chat, calm, humble, and patient. That's how I'm walking in. But with all the questions I ask, I want them in their mind saying, okay, we've got the ringer. And then internally, right, the CEO can't be focused on marketing all the time. So again, another shared trait of marketers is that they're usually overworked, overstressed, and wasting time on running in a hamster wheel. Well, now with a fractional CMO, there are clear objectives, clear strategy that can be presented to the CEO, thus refining the mid-level, junior level roles even more with clear deliverables and objectives that probably didn't exist before, thus taking stress away from them.
Yeah, I want to pick up on that though. Although do the flip and reverse or whichever we're doing, inverting. That I think the flip side is you can expect more accountability, so that can cause some stress because potentially you have a formula you've been running for a long period of time and nobody's really said how's it doing, or let's pull up the reporting and see. So the accountability could be I think it's a good thing, but there may be some teams that are a little off put by that, or a little stressed at the initial outset.
I think it's those who are not pulling their weight get exposed, and those that are going above and beyond are also equally exposed as the power players on that team. For the accountability reason.
All right, Dan. So then I think this is our last question that we have time for today. Okay. So in your experience or with your customers, are the best fractional engagements marathons or sprints, right? Do they basically, you just got to kind of run like essentially forever, or do they have like set target dates and finish dates and you can sort of go all out towards them because you get to rest at some point because you're not going to be working with them anymore? Marathon or sprint? What do you think?
I operate in the gray area of life, and if I could say it's like a series of sprints, right? We're talking about a year retainer and a 90-day win. So that first every 90 days is basically going to be a sprint, and that can be even like drilled down even further to 10 goals and objectives or pain points that need to be addressed to win that sprint. And as priorities shift, as objectives change throughout the year, So how about it's like handing off the baton? Can we call it that way? I know I didn't answer.
Relay.
I didn't choose one. Yeah, a relay. It's not. I don't choose A or B, unfortunately. So if I fail, I fail.
And how about you, Jessica?
I agree. It's got elements of both. I think definitely up front you got to sprint because you need to show your value quickly and get up to speed on the business quickly. But you do need some time for things to take root and manifest results. So, and most, I've done some 6-month engagements, and I wish I wouldn't have done that. I think you do need a good year. But I think come out of the gates fast, getting up to speed on the business.
Okay. So
there we go. I'm going to phrase right now. Speed is in the sprint. Momentum is in the marathon.
There you go. There you go. I'm in charge of coming up with catchy lines.
I was just going to say, leave the catchy writing to do.
A waiver that said all work product.
He's gonna get.
I got to start getting a contract. Ridiculous. Okay, so Jessica, who should reach out to you, and how should they do it?
Well, I think management or leadership of middle market businesses, if they're interested in tackling a growth challenge, leveling up, professionalizing, I would say minimum 5 million in revenue, maximum maybe 50 million in revenue. They can email me, jmoyer at pmpronow.com. So that's JMOYER at pmpronow.com.
Okay. And Dan, your URL is on the screen, but who should be reaching out to you, and how should they reach out to you?
Entrepreneurs who are starting up their business, if they want to, and they should want to, head off and correct those 10 fatal errors we've discovered. Existing businesses who are stagnant, small to mid, at conversionchemistry.com. And if you fill out the contact form, you'll get to me.
All right, guys, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Lots of inverted questions. I appreciate you swung with it. It's great.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dean.
All right.
Appreciate it.
And thanks everyone for watching. See you in the next episode.